On a sweltering summer day, Alex Monroe, owner of Monroe's Trucks, decided it was time to uncover the truth behind the growing whispers of unethical practices at his dealership. Concerned by mixed customer reviews and hidden fees, Alex donned a disguise to go undercover as Mason Turner, a rugged construction worker with nothing to lose. His mission was simple yet daring: to expose corruption and restore the trust his business was built upon. The sun hung high in the sky, casting shimmering heat waves across the expanse of Monroe's Trucks dealership. It was a place that once stood as a beacon of trust, built from the ground up by Alex Monroe, a man who had dedicated his life to providing fair and honest business to the hardworking people of the community. Over the past 15 years, his dealership had flourished, gaining a reputation for quality vehicles, fair pricing, and stellar customer service. But recently, something had changed. Alex had started noticing an unsettling trend in customer reviews. Some praised the wide selection and competitive prices, but more and more complaints were surfacing: mentions of hidden fees, unexpected charges, and aggressive sales tactics. A few customers had even reached out directly, claiming they had been pressured into deals they didn't fully understand. At first, Alex dismissed it as standard business frustrations. After all, dealerships were often accused of being too pushy. But as the months went on, the complaints became too frequent, too specific, and too concerning to ignore. He had built this dealership with the dream of honest business, an alternative to the shady tactics he had once seen his own father fall victim to. The idea that his own company might be falling into the very same trap made his stomach churn. For the past few years, Alex had taken a step back from daily operations, focusing on expanding Monroe's Trucks into other locations across the state. That meant many of his newer employees had never met him in person, a fact that worked to his advantage. Determined to find the truth, Alex crafted a plan. He would go undercover as a customer. Not just any customer, but Mason Turner, a blue-collar worker looking for a reliable truck for his construction business. He spent time perfecting his disguise. Instead of his usual polished slacks and designer watches, he dressed in faded jeans, a worn-out flannel, and a dusty baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He let his normally clean-shaven face develop 3 days' worth of stubble and swapped his luxury car for an old, beat-up Toyota Corolla. The final touch? A backstory. He practiced his new persona, a working man who had been saving up for months to buy a truck that could handle the demands of his job. He had a budget of $35,000, a common mid-range price that would allow him to see how the dealership treated the average buyer. Taking a deep breath, Alex stepped out of his car and into the unknown. The lot was bustling with activity. Salesmen leading customers through rows of gleaming trucks, families browsing, and mechanics tending to vehicles in the service bay. Through the glass windows of the showroom, Alex caught sight of his sales manager, Caleb Davis. Dressed in a sharp suit, Caleb stood by the window, watching the lot like a predator scouting for prey. That was his first red flag. Alex had trusted Caleb to uphold the values of Monroe's Trucks, but there was something unsettling about the way he assessed each customer as though they were nothing more than dollar signs. Before he could dwell on it, a young, eager salesman approached. "Welcome to Monroe's Trucks. I'm Ryan. What brings you in today?" Alex pitched his voice slightly higher, rougher, the voice of Mason Turner. "Name's Mason. Been savon up for a while. Need something reliable for work." He gestured vaguely toward the trucks. "Construction business ain't exactly gentle on vehicles, you know." Ryan's face lit up, sensing an opportunity. "Oh, we've got just what you need. Heavy-duty models, top reliability, best in the state. What's your budget looking like?" "Got about 35 grand," Alex replied, keeping it simple. He wanted to see what they would do with that number, whether they would respect it or try to push him beyond his limits. Ryan led him through the rows of trucks, enthusiastically explaining different models. His knowledge was solid, but Alex noticed subtle sales techniques at play. Ryan strategically emphasized features that made the trucks seem more luxurious, rather than focusing on their durability for work. He downplayed the base models, steering Alex toward one slightly above his budget. Most concerning, he avoided discussing additional costs, like warranties, protection packages, and fees. Finally, they stopped in front of a silver Ford F-150, one of Monroe's Trucks' most popular models. Alex knew this truck inside and out. This beauty just came in last week, Ryan beamed. Perfect for construction, robust engine, excellent towing capacity. And best of all, it comes with our exclusive protection package included. Alex's ears perked up. The protection package wasn't supposed to be automatically included in any vehicle's price. It was an optional add-on. Protection package? He asked, playing dumb. Ryan's smile faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered. Oh yeah? It guarantees your truck stays in top shape. Covers a bunch of things. Definitely worth it. How much? Alex pressed. Ryan hesitated. Well, it's built into the price, so you don't have to worry about it. That was another red flag. Alex maintained his interested expression, but inside, he was fuming. This wasn't how Monroe's trucks was supposed to operate. The optional package had now become mandatory, slipped into deals without the customer's knowledge. They walked back toward the showroom, where Caleb Davis was still watching. Alex noticed something strange. Whenever Ryan hesitated, he glanced toward Caleb. It was almost as if he was waiting for approval. Alex decided to push further. Mind if I take a look under the hood? He asked. Ryan nodded, but his body language shifted, nervous, uncertain. As Alex inspected the engine, he observed Ryan glancing toward the showroom repeatedly. It was clear something was going on inside that building. Once inside, Ryan guided him to his desk to start the paperwork. Alex could feel the tension. Ryan's hands trembled slightly as he pulled up the numbers. Then, something caught Alex's attention. At the next desk over, a customer's voice was rising in frustration. Alex turned slightly, careful to maintain his cover, but his pulse quickened. A middle-aged man in a worn uniform, Marcus Hill, was gripping a stack of papers, his face lined with worry. This isn't right, Marcus said, his voice cracking. We calculated everything down to the last dollar. We can't afford another $3,000. Alex's gut tightened. Caleb Davis emerged from his office, his face plastered with an artificial look of concern. Mr. Hill, Caleb said smoothly, pointing to the fine print. These fees are all clearly outlined in the contract. Marcus looked at the document in disbelief. But Josh told me the total was $32,000, not $35,000. Caleb sighed dramatically. Josh no longer works here. Unfortunately, verbal agreements don't override written contracts. Alex's stomach dropped. The paper Caleb held had fresh ink, dated that morning, suggesting fees had been added after Marcus signed the initial agreement. This wasn't just sales tactics. This was fraud. And Alex Monroe knew he was about to uncover something far worse than he had ever imagined. The air inside Monroe's truck showroom was thick with tension. Alex Monroe, still in disguise as construction worker Mason Turner, sat at a desk, pretending to review his purchase paperwork while keeping his ears locked onto the heated exchange happening nearby. Marcus Hill, a hard-working delivery driver, was pleading with the dealership's sales manager, Caleb Davis. His dream of finally owning a reliable truck for his work was slipping through his fingers. Josh told me the total was $32,000, not $35,000. Marcus insisted, gripping the documents with white-knuckled fists. Caleb Davis leaned back in his chair, adjusting his gold cufflinks. His expression was one of rehearsed sympathy, but his eyes were cold and calculating. I'm afraid Josh is no longer with the company, he said smoothly. And verbal agreements don't override written contracts. If you check here, he tapped a tiny section of fine print. You'll see the final price includes our mandatory protection package, a market adjustment fee, and a premium service plan. Alex felt his blood boil. He knew that fine print hadn't been there before. The ink was still fresh. This wasn't just miscommunication or an honest mistake. This was deliberate deception. And Marcus wasn't the only victim. Alex leaned back in his chair, acting casual as he observed the showroom around him. How many other customers had been caught in the same trap? He decided to test the waters himself. Hey, Ryan, Alex said, turning back to the young salesman assisting him. I just want to make sure I'm not about to get the same surprise Marcus got. Ryan stiffened, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Well, Mr. Turner, everything's pretty standard, he stammered. Just, some fees and protections that come with financing. Protections? Alex raised an eyebrow, lowering his voice. You mean mandatory fees that weren't mentioned until now? Ryan glanced toward Caleb's office, then leaned in slightly. Look, man, I shouldn't be telling you this, but... He hesitated, lowering his voice to a whisper. Caleb has this system. We're told to lowball the initial price to get customers excited, then stack on fees once they're committed. Alex's heart pounded. So this isn't just a mistake? This is how it's always done. Ryan gave a small, guilty nod. Caleb calls it controlling the customer's perception. If we don't follow his process, we get assigned to dead hours. Early mornings, Sundays, when no one's buying. No customers means no commission. Alex gritted his teeth. This was worse than he'd imagined. It wasn't just Caleb bending the rules. It was a full-fledged system of manipulation. And everyone was trapped in it. The customers, the salesmen, and the staff who were too afraid to speak up. Alex knew he needed proof. He discreetly activated the voice recorder on his phone, keeping it hidden in his shirt pocket. So, how does this protection package work? He asked casually, watching Ryan's reaction. Ryan sighed. Technically, it's optional, but if you decline it, then suddenly. He mimicked air quotes. Your financing falls through or your trade-in value drops. It's all set up to make sure people just accept the extra cost. Alex clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay in character. That's pretty shady, man, he muttered. Ryan let out a nervous chuckle, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, well, shady keeps us in business. Alex exhaled slowly, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. He needed more proof before making his move. Mind if I use the restroom? He asked. Ryan nodded eagerly, clearly relieved to get a break from the conversation. Alex took his time walking through the showroom, carefully observing every transaction happening around him. A young farmer was being tricked into believing the market adjustment fee was a state regulation. A retired couple was told they were getting a special discount, but the discount was actually offset by inflated fees. Two salesmen were laughing about how a recent buyer was so excited that he didn't notice the extra charges until it was too late. Alex's stomach twisted. This wasn't just Caleb Davis being greedy. This was a culture of deception built into the very foundation of Monroe's trucks. Then, near the finance office, Alex overheard a conversation that solidified everything. Caleb was hosting a success seminar for new salespeople. Alex positioned himself near a display truck, pretending to browse as he listened in. Customers don't know what they don't know, Caleb was saying, his voice dripping with confidence. Our job is to guide them toward the right decision. He smirked. And by right, I mean our decision. Some of the new hires laughed uncomfortably, while others nodded eagerly, eager to impress. You want high commissions? Follow my system. Tell them what they want before they know what they want. Keep them excited. They should sign before they even realize what's in the fine print. And if they complain later? Caleb shrugged dramatically. Well, they should have read the contract. That was it. Alex had heard enough. Alex returned to Ryan's desk, his mind racing with the next steps. He had plenty of evidence, but the biggest piece was still missing. Caleb Davis admitting, on record, that he had created this system. It had to be public. It had to be undeniable. Alex decided to push things further. He cleared his throat. Actually, Ryan, before I sign anything, I'd like to talk to Mr. Davis about these fees. Can you set that up? Ryan's eyes widened, but he nodded and hurried toward Caleb's office. Through the glass, Alex saw their brief exchange, Caleb's expression shifting from annoyance to predatory interest. A moment later, Alex found himself seated across from Caleb Davis, in an office lined with dark wood, leather chairs, and a collection of fake family photos. Mr. Turner, Caleb greeted him, his smile calculated. Ryan tells me you have concerns about our pricing structure. Alex played his role perfectly, keeping his voice casual. Yeah, just want to make sure I'm not getting hit with any surprise fees, you know? Caleb chuckled, a sound void of warmth. You're sharper than most, Mr. Turner. I respect that. Then, he leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. Let me be straight with you. This business. He gestured toward the lot. It isn't about selling trucks. It's about selling a dream. And we make sure customers pay for that dream, even if they don't realize it. Alex's pulse quickened. This was exactly what he needed. The final piece. The admission of fraud, manipulation, and bribery. And every word was being recorded. Now, all that remained was the confrontation. The air in Caleb Davis's office felt thick, as if the walls themselves had absorbed years of deception. Alex Monroe, still in disguise as Mason Turner, sat across from the man who had corrupted his dealership. The weight of what he had just heard, the smug confession of manipulation, greed, and outright fraud settled heavily on his shoulders. But there was no time for anger. Not yet. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the final piece of proof. And now, it was time to set his plan into motion. Caleb leaned forward, smirking like a man who had played this game for years and never lost. "You see, Mr. Turner, people think they're buying a truck," Caleb continued, his voice dripping with arrogance. "But really? They're buying an idea, and they don't know what they can afford until we tell them." Alex, still keeping up his blue-collar customer act, forced a thoughtful nod. "Yeah, makes sense," he muttered, feigning hesitation. "You're a smart man, Turner," Caleb said smoothly. "So let me make you a deal." He opened a drawer, pulled out a contract, and slid it across the desk. "This protection package. It's mandatory. But," he smirked, lowering his voice, "for a small cash consideration, I can make it disappear." Alex's pulse quickened. Bribery. On top of everything else. Caleb had no idea he was digging his own grave. "Cash consideration, huh?" Alex played along, leaning in slightly. "And that works? Nobody ever catches on." Caleb chuckled, waving a dismissive hand. "I built this system over 2 years, Turner. It's airtight." "The owner," he scoffed. "Monroe's too busy expanding. He trusts me to handle this place. And the staff? They either play along or they find a new job." He smirked. "I've made more in kickbacks this year than Monroe probably makes in legitimate profit." Alex felt a cold clarity settle over him. He had everything he needed: explicit admissions of fraud, manipulation, and now even bribery. It was time to end this. Alex sat up straight, his casual posture dropping. The shift in his demeanor was instant. No longer a confused customer, but a man who owned the very building they sat in. Caleb's smirk faltered. Then, Alex reached up and removed his baseball cap. The realization hit Caleb like a freight train. The color drained from his face. Confusion, recognition, terror. "Mr. Monroe," Caleb stammered, knocking over his neatly stacked papers as he scrambled to sit upright. "I think we need to discuss your employment status," Alex said coldly, his voice now carrying its full weight of authority. Before Caleb could speak, Alex pulled out his phone and pressed play. The entire office filled with the damning words Caleb had just spoken. "The owner's too trusting. The customers are too desperate. The staff either play along or they find a new job. I've made more in kickbacks this year than Monroe probably makes in legitimate profit." Caleb shot up from his chair, lunging for the phone. But Alex was faster. "Touch that phone," Alex said dangerously, "and I'll add destruction of evidence to the list of charges you'll be facing." Caleb froze, realizing he was trapped. "Sit down." Caleb obeyed, his face pale and slick with sweat. "You betrayed this company," Alex continued, his voice steady but filled with restrained fury. "You turned my business into a predatory machine. And now, you're going to face the consequences." Alex reached for the dealership's intercom system. "All staff to the showroom floor immediately. Emergency meeting. No exceptions." Caleb's breathing turned ragged. "Wait, we can work this out." But Alex ignored him. Minutes later, the entire staff stood in the showroom, confusion and tension hanging thick in the air. Many employees had never seen Alex in person before, but the weight of his presence made it clear who he was. "For those who don't know me," Alex said, his voice carrying across the silent room, "I'm Alex Monroe, the owner of this dealership." A ripple of shock and whispers spread through the crowd. Alex turned to Caleb, who stood rigid at the front of the group, trapped. "Today, I've discovered that Monroe's Trucks has been operating under a system of fraud and deception," Alex continued. "Customers have been manipulated, scammed, and pressured into deals they didn't understand." Gasps. Employees glanced at one another, guilt flashing across some faces, anger on others. "And the man responsible?" Alex gestured toward Caleb. "I have recordings, documents, and witness accounts proving that Caleb Davis has been running this scheme behind my back, and it ends today." A low murmur swept through the employees. Some looked relieved. Others looked furious. Then, Alex turned to Ryan, the young salesman who had helped expose the scam. "Ryan, can you tell everyone what happens when a salesman refuses to follow Caleb's system?" Ryan swallowed hard, then stepped forward. We get pushed to the worst shifts. Our commissions are killed. Some of us even get fired." More whispers. Some employees nodded in agreement. Alex let the silence sink in, then faced Caleb once more. "Caleb Davis, Alex said, voice firm. You're fired, effective immediately. Caleb sputtered, eyes darting around for support, but no one came to his defense. Security stepped forward, ready to escort him out. You're making a huge mistake, Caleb hissed. Without me, this business will tank. Alex shook his head. I'd rather earn an honest dollar than steal 100. Caleb had nothing left to say. As security led him out, the dealership floor erupted into whispers. Once Caleb was gone, Alex turned back to the employees. This dealership was never meant to be a scam, he said. Starting today, we're going to rebuild the right way. He outlined the new policies. Full transparency, no more hidden fees. Honest sales tactics, no more manipulation. Every past deal under review. Refunds and corrections for customers who were overcharged. Then, he turned to Marcus Hill, the customer who had nearly lost everything. Mr. Hill, Alex said, your contract is void. You'll get the truck at the original price, and every extra fee will be refunded. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, he whispered. My family, we needed this. The showroom broke into applause. For the first time in years, Monroe's trucks felt like the business it was meant to be. Honest, transparent, trustworthy. As Alex looked around, he knew this was just the beginning. But for the first time in a long time, it was a beginning worth fighting for. The echoes of the dramatic confrontation still lingered in the air at Monroe's trucks. The once polished, yet corrupt, veneer of the dealership had been shattered, exposing the rot that had taken hold under Caleb Davis's rule. But while the cancer of deception had been cut out, the real challenge was healing the business and restoring trust. Alex Monroe knew that the fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The very next morning, Alex was the first to arrive at the dealership. He walked past the glass showroom, where rows of trucks gleamed under the morning sun, vehicles that were once sold with deception. But today, they would be sold with honesty. Instead of heading to his executive office, Alex moved his desk onto the showroom floor. He wasn't going to hide behind glass walls anymore. He was going to lead from the front. The first thing he did was call an all-staff meeting. Starting today, Alex announced, standing before his employees, Monroe's trucks will operate with complete transparency. There will be no more hidden fees, no more manipulated contracts, and no more deception. If we say a price, we mean it. If a customer leaves our dealership, they should feel confident, not confused. A heavy silence filled the room. Then, a hand shot up. It was Ryan, the young salesman who had unknowingly helped Alex uncover the corruption. Sir, if we stop using those tactics, won't we lose customers? Alex nodded, acknowledging the fear. At first, maybe. But in the long run, people will trust us. And trust? That's what keeps customers coming back. Some employees exchanged nervous glances, but others, especially the ones who had pushed back against Caleb's methods, looked relieved. Ryan hesitated, then spoke again. So what do we do now? Alex smiled. We start fresh. Fixing the dealership wouldn't be easy. The damage Caleb had done ran deep, both with customers and employees. One of the first things Alex did was go through every deal from the past 6 months. Customers who had been charged hidden fees were contacted and refunded. Those who had been pressured into buying unnecessary add-ons were given the option to remove them at no extra cost. Monroe's trucks began offering no haggle pricing, meaning what was advertised was exactly what people paid. At first, this cost the dealership thousands of dollars. But the word spread fast. A week after the changes went into effect, local news stations picked up the story. Monroe's trucks, once plagued by unethical sales tactics, is leading a revolution in car sales, offering full transparency and making things right with past customers. Suddenly, customers who had sworn never to return were coming back, intrigued by the new approach. And the ones who had never considered buying from them before, they were starting to trust Monroe's trucks for the first time. Alex knew that if he wanted long-term change, he had to rebuild the culture from the ground up. He called in Josh, the former salesman who had been fired for refusing to participate in Caleb's schemes, and offered him his job back. But not just any job. Josh, Alex said, handing him a contract. I want you to lead our new sales training program. Josh's eyes widened. You want me to train the team? You stood up for what was right, Alex said. That's the kind of leadership we need. Within a month, Josh created a training program focused on ethical selling. No more sales quotas based on manipulation. No more control the customer's perception tactics. Every deal would be explained in plain language, with zero pressure. The results? Salesmen who had once relied on deception found that honesty actually built stronger customer relationships. And for the first time, they weren't afraid of losing their jobs for being truthful. One of the biggest betrayals under Caleb's leadership was how Monroe's trucks had stopped being part of the community. Alex was determined to change that. The story of Marcus Hill, the hardworking delivery driver who was nearly scammed out of his truck, had touched Alex deeply. One evening, Alex called Marcus back to the dealership. "Marcus," he said, "I know refunding your fees and getting you the truck at the original price was the right thing to do, but I want to do something more." He pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Marcus opened it, confusion in his eyes. Then, as he read, his hands began to shake. "This," Marcus choked up. "This is a scholarship fund in my daughter's name." Alex nodded. "Every year, Monroe's Trucks will sponsor the education of hard-working families like yours, because this dealership isn't just about trucks. It's about people." Marcus wiped at his eyes, overwhelmed. "You didn't have to do this," he whispered. "Yes, I did," Alex said. "Because trust isn't just words. It's action." To celebrate the dealership's transformation, Alex organized a massive event, a community appreciation day. Free food and drinks, games and activities for families, discounts on trucks, with all fees laid out openly. That weekend, the lot was packed with people who had once been wary of Monroe's trucks, but now they were starting to believe in it again. Alex walked through the lot, shaking hands, answering questions, and seeing something he hadn't seen in years. Customers smiling, not stressed. One moment stood out. Near a new truck, he spotted Ryan helping an elderly couple go over a contract. Alex watched as Ryan carefully explained every detail, answering questions patiently, ensuring they understood every fee. The couple smiled, completely at ease. And Alex felt a surge of pride. This was what Monroe's Trucks was always meant to be. That evening, as the sun set over the dealership, Alex stood in front of a newly installed sign near the entrance. It read, "Monroe's Trucks, where honesty drives US forward." He felt a presence beside him. It was Marcus Hill, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You know, Mr. Monroe," Marcus said, watching the last families leave the event, "what you did here? It's bigger than just selling trucks." Alex smiled. "Sometimes," he said, looking at the dealership he had rebuilt, "you have to tear everything down to rebuild it right." As the lights of Monroe's Trucks illuminated the night, Alex knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. But now, they were on the right path. The transformation of Monroe's Trucks wasn't just about fixing a broken business. It was about redefining what it meant to succeed. For years, the dealership had prided itself on being a trusted name in the community, a place where hardworking people could find a reliable vehicle without fear of deception. But under Caleb Davis's leadership, that trust had been betrayed, replaced by greed, manipulation, and dishonesty. Now, with the corrupt system dismantled and transparency restored, Monroe's Trucks wasn't just back in business, it was becoming a beacon of ethical success. But Alex Monroe knew this wasn't just about trucks. It was about something far greater. It was about proving that doing the right thing still mattered. For many businesses, the temptation to cut corners for the sake of higher profits is always there. After all, Caleb Davis hadn't operated in isolation. He had built a system based on the common dealership model, one that played on emotions, confusion, and urgency to push customers into spending more than they should. His justification? Everyone does it. That's just business. But Alex had always believed otherwise. He had built Monroe's Trucks on the belief that success should never come at the cost of integrity. And yet, he had looked away for too long. He had trusted the wrong people, assuming they were upholding the values he had instilled. That assumption had nearly destroyed everything. When he fired Caleb and exposed the corruption, Alex wasn't just saving his dealership. He was taking responsibility for what had happened under his watch. And that was the first major lesson. True leadership means being accountable, not just for your successes, but for your failures. There's an old saying, "The best time to do the right thing was yesterday. The second best time is now." Alex could have ignored the warning signs. He could have continued expanding, leaving Monroe's Trucks under Caleb's control, never bothering to investigate. Would the dealership have kept making money? Sure. But at what cost? More customers deceived, more employees forced to lie, more broken promises. Instead, Alex made a different choice. He chose to tear down the corruption, even though it cost him money, even though it meant facing difficult truths, and even though it was the harder path. And that decision? It changed everything. It didn't just save the dealership, it restored its soul. Because at the end of the day, every business is a reflection of the choices its leaders make. And the choice to do the right thing, even when it's difficult, is what separates true success from empty profit. When Monroe's trucks began refunding customers, some people thought Alex was crazy. One of his financial advisors even pulled him aside. "Alex, you're giving away money. You can't run a business like this." But Alex knew something they didn't. Money comes and goes. Trust lasts forever. When customers feel respected, they return. When employees feel valued, they work harder. When a business operates with honesty, it earns loyalty that no amount of marketing can buy. And that's exactly what happened. The initial losses from refunds and policy changes? They were nothing compared to what Monroe's trucks gained. Customers who spread the word about the dealership's fairness. Employees who were motivated to do their best, knowing they were part of something honest. A community that rallied behind them, supporting the business not just because of what it sold, but because of what it stood for. By choosing trust over temporary profit, Alex future-proofed his business. Because in the long run, honesty always wins. One of the most heartbreaking realizations Alex had during his investigation was how many employees had been forced into unethical practices. Take Ryan, for example. Ryan wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't looking to scam customers. But under Caleb's rule, if he didn't push hidden fees, he got assigned to the worst shifts. If he told the truth, his commission suffered. If he tried to resist, he risked losing his job altogether. The same went for Josh, the honest salesman who was fired for refusing to deceive customers. This was another critical lesson. A corrupt system forces good people into bad choices. When Alex rebuilt Monroe's trucks, he didn't just remove the bad leadership. He created an environment where good employees could thrive. And that's something every business should strive for. Because when employees feel safe to do the right thing, they will. Every time. One of the most unexpected consequences of Monroe's trucks transformation was how it impacted other businesses. Shortly after the dealership's story went viral, Alex started receiving calls from other business owners. Some were other dealerships. Some were completely different industries. But they all asked the same thing. How did you turn things around? It made Alex realize something powerful. People want to believe in ethical business. They just need proof that it can work. And Monroe's trucks became that proof. Other dealerships started reevaluating their own pricing policies. Local businesses adopted more transparency in their customer interactions. Employees at different companies started speaking up about unfair practices, using Monroe's trucks as an example. Alex hadn't just saved his own business. He had started a movement that proved success doesn't have to come at the expense of honesty. As Alex stood outside Monroe's trucks one evening, watching customers browse the lot with confidence instead of anxiety, he felt something he hadn't in a long time. Pride. Not the kind of pride that comes from profits or expansion, but the kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing. The kind that comes from standing for something bigger than yourself. Looking up, he read the new sign above the dealership. Monroe's Trucks, where honesty drives US forward. It wasn't just a slogan. It was a promise. A promise that trust is more valuable than money. That leadership means accountability. That one decision can change everything. And most importantly, that doing the right thing isn't just an option, it's the only way forward. If this story inspired you, let it be a reminder. Speak up when something feels wrong. Stand firm in your values, even when it's hard. Trust is earned, not given. And if you believe in stories that prove integrity still matters, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Because in the end, the world doesn't need more deception. It needs more people willing to do the right thing. Personal takeaway from this story. The story of Monroe's Trucks isn't just about a business. It's about a fundamental truth we all face in life. Integrity is everything. At some point, we've all seen people in power abuse their position, whether in business, at work, or even in personal relationships. Sometimes, standing up against corruption feels impossible, like fighting an uphill battle against a system designed to win. But this story proves something powerful. One person's decision to do the right thing can change everything. Alex Monroe could have ignored the warning signs. He could have focused on profits and let his dealership keep exploiting customers. But he didn't. Instead, he stood up, exposed the truth, and took responsibility for fixing it. And that decision? It transformed his business, his employees, and even his entire community. This is a lesson for all of us. If you're in a leadership position, lead with honesty. If you see wrongdoing, have the courage to speak up. If you make a mistake, own it and make it right. Because, in the end, money fades, but reputation lasts forever. The world needs more stories like this, stories that remind us that integrity still matters, that honesty is still worth fighting for, and that doing the right thing will always lead to real success. If this story inspired you, if you believe that integrity, honesty, and courage should always win, then make sure to subscribe to our channel, Story Precious. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story. We bring you meaningful stories that touch your heart, challenge your thinking, and inspire you to be a better version of yourself. Because sometimes, a single story can change your perspective on life. Hit like, share this video, and subscribe to Story Precious now. Let's keep spreading stories that matter.